Check. Hold on. Check. Oh, it's way down on Zoom. God damn. Yeah, and I'm not terribly quiet on the live stream. So that tracks. Because I'm like hitting real levels. But I sound good now? Good.
rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland front of the lane, lob to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The first week of the NBA season couldn't have gone better for your Cleveland Cavaliers. They have about a 20-point margin of victory in their first three games. They are 3-0, and the vibes are feeling fantastic. The vibes are always fantastic when I'm joined by my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing great, Justin. It's been really nice to have the Cavs back. It's been obviously as optimal a start as you can find. You know, we're sitting here nitpicking ninth men minutes in the group DMs and things like that, trying to figure out what there is to poke at, and you know what's sustainable, what's not, which typically means things are going pretty well. And I mean, you know, I know you have the numbers ready for everyone, but my goodness, are things going well against teams that we expected to do well against, but nevertheless, like, maybe not this well.
I think we're a little more cowardly than you are telling the listeners right now, because I think you and I both kind of messaged before some of these games being like, I'm a little bit nervous. I was a little bit nervous about before Toronto. I was a little nervous before Detroit. You just worry about a letdown game. We've had some of those games in the past. We've had games where the Cavs have got out to very good starts and, you know, kind of let go of the rope in the third quarter, made games a little more difficult than they have been. And you know, I think there is certainly still a feeling out process when it comes to this team. I think we have seen some growing pains. I think we have seen a lot of kind of areas that still are there for improvement. But it's just so encouraging that despite all of that, they are performing as well as they are collectively. They have the third best offense in the league. They are fifth in defensive rating. In terms of the efficiency of their shots, they're number one in true shooting percentage. They're number one in effective field goal percentage. Those are great signs. They have a test coming up against the New York Knicks, who are second in both of those categories in terms of efficiency. But I just feel really good about how they've been playing overall. And, you know, you kind of wonder, going into a system where Evan Mobley is going to be taking on more ball handling reps, and we're experimenting there, going into a kind of an approach to the game plan where the only player that's played 30 minutes per game is Evan Mobley. Everyone else is below 30. And we have 10 players at 17 minutes or above in minutes per game. Like, you just, there's no guarantee when you have that kind of approach, no matter who your competition is, that you're going to win, let alone win comfortably. Detroit almost beat Boston. Toronto, without Emmanuel quickly beat Philadelphia, right? Like, these things can happen. Chicago beat Milwaukee. That's typical early season stuff. So for the Cavs to take care of business and do it as comfortably as they have, I think they deserve a little bit of a pat on the back.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, it's, again, like, if we're gonna criticize them when they do slip up or you know, don't meet the moment, like, the fact that they're doing it with such aplomb is really exciting. And I think something that you mentioned kind of jumped out to me there, which is that, you know, we've seen this team get out to big leads against teams that are, you know, not near the top of the league, and, you know, then kind of let go of the rope, and those other teams battle back and either steal the game or make it competitive again. And, like, the one thing that has kind of been true of all three of these games so far is pretty close first quarter. All right, Cavs are starting to take over in the second quarter. Third, fourth quarter, Cavs are killing them and taking command of the game. And, like, that's been really exciting for a team that really had a hard time coming out of the break last year. You know, coming out of halftime a little, you know, out of rhythm or whatever it may be. Like, they have really attacked over the course of a game as they've gotten comfortable, and it's been really fun to see.
And I think the thing that stands out to me is what's really been making a big difference has been the Cavs' depth. I think those are the minutes that they're really winning. I think a lot of their primary lineups right now have been performing well on both ends of the court. But you look at it and, you know, their three most used lineups have not done well offensively yet. Their starting lineup through the first two games with Dean Wade actually kind of struggled a little bit on the defensive end. I think some of that had to do with hot shooting from Washington and Toronto to start those games. But you look at kind of the most used lineups. Their starters only a 113.8 offensive rating. That's, kind of below what you would expect. Still performing well because of the defense. But then you go down to your most used Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley lineup, 112.9 offensive rating, even worse than the starters. Your most used Darius Garland and Jared Allen lineup, a 107.1 offensive rating. So your three most used lineups so far in the season aren't performing particularly well offensively, yet overall on the season, you have the third best offensive performance. And I think some of that is the feeling out process. Some of that is, just kind of highlighting the depth that the Cavs have. And I
some
think
of it's good old-fashioned variance because these samples are hilariously small.
A lot of it is, right? Like, I think that's why we typically wait about 20 games before we really put weight to
these are numbers that would
data.
meaningfully be changed by scoring one more bucket or allowing one less bucket,
Right, exactly. And you're talking about lineups that have played for 40 minutes, right? So it's or 40 to 13 with some of these kind of staggered lineups. But I'm not saying that as red flags that these lineups don't work. I'm just saying that it's encouraging that on the whole they are finding ways to make things work. We're experimenting with these lineups, and I think just like we wait till there's a lot of data before we start to put weight to the lineup data and on-off splits and all that kind of stuff. I think we're seeing the similar thing with Kenny Atkinson in terms of how he's approaching the rotation, where I'm sticking with a very, very rigid rotation. We're seeing substitutions for the same players at the same general times and feeling out, okay, what is variance? What is, a little bit of bad shooting luck one way or the other? And giving these guys the opportunity to develop chemistry through continuity.
Yeah, you've been on top of this, and I thought it was a good note because I didn't actually notice it until you mentioned it, which is like these subs are like happening almost the exact same time every game. They've even taken some like out of cycle timeouts, it feels like, at points where it's like that's not normally where I would see a timeout to get some subs in. Where like it's very clear like they've been relatively orthodox. Now, with that said, it's really easy to be orthodox when you're beating everyone or never, like they've only really had they've really only had one real stretch of foul trouble, which is Darius. And like, and they've mostly been in close or winning by 20 to 30 points. So it's like it is easier to do that, but like it is noteworthy that like it feels like it's been very explicit of like, okay, I want to see what this lineup does for these minutes. And like to your point, like there is some meat on the bone, but also like just none of them are bad. Like, which is really, really helpful. Like I haven't really seen many lineups that, even the ones that like, are eyebrow raisers for me, like, it feels like the Cavs aren't getting punished for pretty much any combination they've had so far.
Yeah, right now the only lineup that has a negative net rating that's played at least 10 minutes is the Garland, Merrill, Levert, Niang, and Allen lineup, which I think that's asking a lot of Jared Allen on the defensive end.
That's one I don't love either.
Yeah, those three have kind of been the most common pairing with both Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, as well as Darius Garland and Jared Allen. Neither of those lineups are really clicking offensively. I think some of that has to do with Sam Merrill not having a great shooting start to the season. We do know that he missed the majority of the preseason with tendonitis in his shooting wrist. I assume that is still a little bit of a factor, but it's nice to see him get going against Washington. But yeah, you're right. Like the substitutions have been very, very rigid. You look at when Sam Merrill has come into the game in the last two games. Against Washington, he came in at the 7-minute mark of the first. Detroit, 6-minute mark of the first. He left at the 10:30 mark of the second quarter, the 10:19 mark of the second quarter versus Detroit. He's entering the game at the same time pretty much of the third quarter. He's getting these 9-minute shifts pretty consistently. Same thing with George Niang. He gets an 8-minute shift stretching the first to the second. He gets an 8-minute stretch shift from the third to the fourth. He's basically checking in and out of the game at the same time. And I'm really curious to see, if I had to guess, Carter, and just kind of looking forward to this next kind of stretch of games that the Cavs have, they're going to be tested now. Like it's nice that we had this kind of easy start to work through some things, but you're playing the Knicks, you're playing the Lakers, you're playing the Magic. All three of those teams are probably going to test you on both ends of the court. The Lakers look fantastic to start the year. Then you play the Milwaukee Bucks twice. These are going to be a really, really important 5 games. If you go 3-2 in that stretch, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself. But I'm very curious to see how Kenny approaches things from a rotation. And if I had to guess, I think we're going to see kind of a very similar rotation pattern, but with shorter shifts. You know, instead of Sam Merrill getting 9-minute shifts, maybe we see Sam kind of come in at the same times, but we're getting a 5-minute shift out of him, because I just have a hard time believing that we're going to see our starters play less than 30 minutes when you're going against teams that are playing their starters 36 to 38 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, because the games haven't been that close down the stretch, definitely we haven't seen the minutes rack up for the top guys. You know, they really haven't been pressed. I think so far the leader is like, I think someone played 37 at one point. I can't remember, but I don't think, you know, we haven't seen the minutes close, and like, you know, again, no disrespect to the Wizards, Pistons, and Raptors, but like they're about to play a different tier of team. They just are.
Yeah,
and like it's going to, you know, it'll be interesting to see like how committed Kenny is to the 10-man rotation, because that was kind of the thing with JB that I always felt, which is that, you know, even when he went to 10, you know, it was like the thing that was kind of abandoned at first, at you know, the first sign of trouble. Like, all right, this game is going to be hard. No way. Going down to 9. You know, and like, I wonder if that'll be different with Kenny, who like does, because, you know, like there are coaches that like are like, no, I'm playing my 10. Like Steve Kerr, famously, even to his own detriment at times, has played 10 guys.
Kenny in interviews has said, you know, I'm anticipating sticking with this rotation through 20 games, right? Like I want to kind of get this feeling out process. I want to see what these guys look like. I want to give them the opportunity to build that chemistry. And I think you can do that while still modifying the approach. And to me, that's going to be the most interesting thing of, okay, is it going to be 10, but the shifts are shorter for these guys, right? Like I that would be my guess. I think that's the most logical thing. But I do want to see if the shifts are going to be as rigid in the second half in particular. I understand going through kind of your anticipated substitution patterns in the first half, but if Sam Merrill's struggling with his outside shot, or, you know, we're not able to go to the 2-3 zone with Merrill as frequently because Cat's in the middle kind of being a zone breaker against the Knicks, or Anthony Davis is giving us trouble there. Do we go to a Ty Jerome in the second half a little sooner? Do they stick with the exact same rotation? I think that's the kind of stuff that I'm really looking forward to. And I think these are the opportunities where we're going to really kind of learn the values and the identity of this coaching staff and how they anticipate approaching these games early in the season.
Yeah, it's like I always say, you don't really test a culture when things are going well. You test it under duress. And like I expect the Cavs to be put under some duress over the next couple weeks, because most of these games are really, really challenging. And like, you know, right now, you know, as you've noted in our rundown, 10 guys are averaging 17 minutes a game or more right now. Like, do I think that's going to persist over the course of the season? I mean, I'll bet Kenny hopes it does. But will it? I don't know. I don't know. It's just funny how much your brain kind of melts when you're just used to one coach or one style of play for like 2-3 years. You kind of forget what it's like to watch any other kind of style or any other kind of philosophy. So it's like I still am kind of learning what Kenny's values are, and like how like rigid he is with those, you know? Like a guy like Steve Kerr, who again Kenny coached under, was like, yeah, I'm playing 10 to 11 to sometimes 12 guys, and I don't care if it's the NBA finals. And I trust that those guys.
Ty Lue, who he also coached under, you know, sometimes I'm playing totally different guys based on the matchup. Sometimes I'm really going to ride certain matchups or certain lineups. I'm willing to bench my starters. Like
Channing Frye, this is a bad series for you. Get out. You know, like it's just two very different sets of tutelage.
And I think we're going to learn a lot. went on the Knicks Film School podcast to do the preview for tomorrow's game, so you guys can check that out. But one of the things I found really interesting was Andrew was saying, through 2 games, they have no idea what the rotation is going to be, right? Like Tibbs' substitutes have been completely different game to game. He's going to shorten things down and play 7 or 8 certain games. I fully kind of expect that approach against the Cavs, but it's a real kind of feeling out process. Whereas the Cavs, they do seem to have a very established rotation, right? Like we can kind of set our clock to it right now, and I'm just curious to see how that approach changes. I'm really, really curious because I think we're going to learn a lot about this team over the next week. And, it's a lot of different interesting styles too, right? Like the Knicks, especially with Karl Anthony Towns, they're using him a little bit more as a dribble handoff hub. They're kind of trying to replicate some of that Hartenstein playmaking through him. Obviously, it didn't work against Boston. It worked incredibly well their next game against Indiana. I think Cleveland presents a tougher defensive challenge than Indiana, and I think the Cavs are able to generate a good amount of rim pressure that Indiana just isn't doing right now. So I'm interested from a styles make fight perspective of how we look against the Knicks.
Yeah, I'm excited too. A couple other scheme things that we need to, I think, rotational things we should dive in on just before we move off of it is the fact that they really have been committed to the pairing of Jarrett and Darius and Evan and Donovan, which the numbers have never really supported that so much. But like he's committed to it. I mean, you have the numbers, only 9 possessions for Darius and Evan without Jarrett and Donovan on the court so far this year, and only 10 for Mitchell and Allen, who were kind of the hand and glove fits on both sides of the floor. Like, what do you agree with it continuing to pursue this? Because like part of me is like, it does make sense insofar as like if Donnie is clearly kind of the franchise right now and Evan's clearly the future of the franchise, it makes sense that they got to be good together. They got to be able to carry lineups together without a bunch of like high end support. I don't know if it's that or if Kenny sees something differently in them within his offense. Like, what do you think of? Why do you think they're doing it? And like, do you agree with it?
Right now, like the results are working. Both of those lineups have been, positives, and that's a really good sign. We said it on the last podcast, but if Evan Mobley is able to attack and break guys down off the dribble, I just think that completely changes the feasibility of that pairing with Donovan Mitchell. And I think if it allows for Mitchell to kind of have some of those off-ball reps to catch the ball with advantage, I think it's just kind of looked very natural with those two together. And, when it comes to Darius and Jarrett, that should absolutely work. That was such a good pairing in their all-star season. When you pair them with shooters, like I know Sam's not shooting particularly well right now, but whether it's, him getting back to his regular form or Max Strus in later in the year, like that should absolutely work. And honestly, Darius is a better lob thrower than Mitchell, right? Like Donnie has joked about that in the past about how he's got to work on throwing lobs. Like that should absolutely work. I think Jarrett's a better screen setter, and that is significant now that Darius is no longer passing up those open threes, right? Like anytime the defense goes under on a Jarrett screen, Jarrett's really making contact. He's clearing a lot of space, and I think we've seen Darius get some good looks out of those actions. So I don't hate it. I don't hate going to those sets. I think Mobley is our more dynamic defender, and I like having him out there with Mitchell and Dean Wade. I think those lineups can create havoc. As much as, you want to go back to something that worked in the past, it's working this time around, and it's working both ways. And to me, that's the most important thing. But I'll be curious to see if we do kind of mix things up.
Yeah, I think ultimately I like it for the reason I kind of laid out, which is like these two just they can't be a meh combo together when they're on the floor together without other starters around. Like, I just feel like that significantly caps your ceiling. And like, ultimately you need to have that flexibility where, oh crap, Darius picked up a third foul and it's a playoff series, and all right, it's going to be Donovan and Evan in these minutes. And like, so I don't know if he'll commit to it long term or not, but I like the idea that it's getting those two pairings are getting reps.
I kind of feel like it will be, because if you're going to have, structured substitution patterns, unless those lineups just stop working,
yeah,
I don't think you change it up, and I don't anticipate those lineups to stop working. Like, I think this more dynamic version of Evan Mobley makes that pairing feasible. Like, when in the past, where the only way he could generate an advantage is through screen setting, and he was a below average screen setter, it just wasn't going to work with Donovan. But now, especially when you have someone like Ty Jerome that's able to go out there and run an action with Mobley, like those two can create an advantage between the two of them, and then all of a sudden the ball swings to Donovan, and boom, like you've got these high quality opportunities for him. It's a lot of fun, and I don't see any reason why those pairings wouldn't work. It's one of those things that even when we went over the lineup data in the past, like the only thing that we could point to for Mitchell and Mobley was that the screen setting wasn't there. There was no reason for Darius and Jarrett to not work on paper. Like it like boggled my mind. So now that we're seeing both of those pairings and seeing those pairings working, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm glad to see it. I feel like I'm going a little off rundown here, but you mentioned him, and now I feel like we got to talk about him. How about our boy Ty Jerome, the prince that was promised? Oh my God, Justin, who's leading the Cavs in points per 36 possessions right now?
Ty Jerome.
Justin, who's leading the team in assists per 36 right now?
Ty Jerome.
Who's leading the team in steals per 36 right now?
Ty Jerome.
Who's leading the team in field goal percentage right now?
Woo, that'd be Ty Jerome.
It's not. It's Jared Allen. I was just being a jerk. But
yeah, that makes sense. He went 10 for 10.
Yeah, he's
I
only
wasn't
missed.
even listening to you. I was just like, the cadence was there. I'm like, these are my windows to talk.
The window is there. Yeah, Jarrett's got more blocks than missed field goals this season.
That's obscene.
But man, I mean, obviously, Ty isn't going to keep shooting 74% from the field. Unless we've got an all-star on our hands, which feels unlikely. But like, he has really meaningfully changed the flow of the game on a lot of possessions, and I feel like that kind of like that herky-jerky kind of rhythm, like I DM, we have a group DM with a couple buddies, and I said we got a TJ McConnell at home, like some of that, like, oh, he's shooting now, or like that slow second step on his rim attacks. There's like, you still have an extra step to go here. We thought you stopped. Like, he's got a lot of these weird dribble drives that really use his length and touch to his advantage, and he has just been a revelation, dude.
Yeah, it's like a quarterback that can kind of make those off-platform throws, right? Like, it just makes a defense unsure of what to expect from him. And, the playmaking's been solid. He's a good pick-and-roll ball handler. The shooting's been there. The kind of typical Ty Jerome that you'd expect of high assist-to-turnover ratio, that's been there. I'm very interested to see kind of his arc with the team this season, assuming everyone can stay healthy. But I just see that this is a guy that you might even be able to run out there in some 3-guard sets. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Kenny play him at small forward to some extent, because he has the same height as Max Strus, not as beefy, and doesn't have like the history of playing like power forward that Max has. But I think that could be potentially viable at times. I think there's going to be nights where you're playing him over Karras because of the ball handling. I think you can play him over Merrill potentially if he's having a tough night. And
that's something to keep an eye on, because right now Ty is very, very specifically the 10th man in the rotation. He's at 16.7 minutes a game. Sam is right above him at 17.2. George at 18.4. Ice at 18.6. Karras at 19.8. I feel like all those guys might end up giving a minute or two over to Ty if he keeps playing like this, because maybe not George, because it's just wrong position group, but of the wings and guards, like it's getting hard to deny the guy.
Yeah, it really is, and having a guy that can fill a variety of roles, I think, is so important, right? Because you probably credibly can play him at two positions, maybe even a third in spurts at the small forward position. But it just gives you optionality with your lineups. And I think that is so important. That's something that we haven't always had in the past. And you know how much like my takeaway from last offseason is like playmaking should be the number one priority of all these teams. And I just feel like the Cavs are doing such a good job getting defenses in rotation. They are creating high quality opportunities. It's funny because when you look at it in terms of percentage of 3-point attempts, or like what percentage 3-point attempts make of their overall shot diet, they're 17th in the league. Like they're not getting a ton of threes up. They're getting up 34 a night. And it's kind of interesting.
And last night kind of pushed that number up.
Right. And it's interesting to me that we're seeing at the start of games, the Cavs are getting up a lot of threes, right? Like they got up 12 against Detroit. They got up a lot early against Washington. And it almost seems like defenses start scrambling to take away the threes. And the Cavs are like, all right, we're getting you scrambling and we are going to feast at the rim. We are going to absolutely dominate these high value possessions that we're able to generate. And I really love that approach. Like they are taking what the defense is giving them. And as well as you can shoot from three, dunks from Jared Allen and Evan Mobley or Donovan Mitchell attacking a defender that's a step slow on a closeout. Like those are the best possible shots you can get. You are going to convert those at a high rate. Jared Allen is going to have 10 for 10 nights, right? Like it's really, really fun to see that even though the overall, 3-point diet isn't as high as we might kind of expect out of a Kenny Atkinson offense, especially with a lot of the conversations we've had in the offseason, I don't feel like they're passing up threes, right? Like there was a couple against Washington that like Wade passed up that I thought he would have taken the two previous games. Okoro's passed up a few. Darius passed up one that I saw. But like these are such outlier events that like I have instant recall a day later here because it doesn't feel like they're giving up a lot of those threes, but they're not breaking their offense to force 3-pointers when defenses are trying to take it away. They recognize that they are able to get into the paint, they are able to attack the rim, and they are able to convert those at a high level. And I love that. I love that they're not like just one-track mind of we need to hit 43s. We need to attempt 43s. We have to get to that number no matter what. I really, really like the way that they're playing offense, and I hope that this is something that continues to translate over as they play some of these better teams over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, again, the shot chart doesn't lie, and their 3-point rate isn't maybe where I thought it might be under Kenny Atkinson. And by the way, the 3-point rate was actually quite good last year. They actually got a ton of threes up last year. It just didn't
very high volume too.
It just didn't always feel that good, And I think that sometimes it's just as simple as like the way it feels on the floor, because it feels like they are assaulting the rim, and when they do kick it out to three, guys are catching the ball with their feet set, not on crazy motion, Sam Merrill notwithstanding, who always takes them with crazy motion. And like they're getting plenty of room, of their 34 3-point attempts a game, about 19 of them are wide open. Like that's a very healthy percentage, I think, of their shots. I would all have to do some math to figure out where it is representative of the rest of the league, but and they're using the threat of the rim to open up 3-point attempts. They're using the threat of the three to open up rim attempts. I think of the play where against the Pistons where Evan runs an inverted pick and roll with Donovan, sucks two defenders in and forces like a half switch where Duren is kind of left at the nail. Donovan catches, Evan throws it to Donovan at the top of the arc, and Duren kind of freezes trying to figure out whether he's going to close that or not, and Donovan just blows by him for a wide open layup. Like your points per possession on wide open layups is going to be 2. Like that, and that's a good points per possession, right. And I feel like they're just getting so many clean looks as part of that. Like, yeah, there's some stuff that might, there's been some tough, like a guy like Ty Jerome who has not missed a floater yet, it feels. But maybe he'll miss 1 or 2 of those, and some of these numbers go down. But like, I'm just not going to be worried about the shot diet when the offensive rating is this good and my eye test is this good so far. And it feels like guys are still kind of figuring their way out through things.
Yeah, and there does seem to be that point of emphasis, right? Like, I feel like we're taking more pull-ups in transition. I can tell that guys are sprinting the corner more frequently. It's really funny to watch Darius just get clean open from a Jared Allen screen and him be like, I do have an open pass, but I'm supposed to shoot these now. And like, you can see like the half-second delay in his brain before he takes those threes. But you can tell that these guys understand what is expected of them, and they're taking those threes. I think Wade's three-point volume overall has been really good. Like, up and down the lineup, it just seems like they're not leaving a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to those attempts. And, you know, it's just an understanding that, hey, if you want to take that away from us, we're even better inside, and we're going to kill you there. And that's just a really, really fun kind of approach from them.
Yeah, and while the entire NBA commentariat is losing their mind about style of play and how everyone's, it's so many threes, it's so ugly. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't watch the Cavs and go, the only way we can compete with a team like the Celtics is to get 53s up. I think when I watch the way they're playing right now, I'm like, that's how you compete with the Celtics. You don't give up a ton of open threes, and you just pummel them. With a nuanced and interesting offensive attack that gets a lot of open layups.
Yeah, I feel like the people making those arguments aren't out there watching every single team. They've just got a pre-existing gripe.
Because I think the league is so freaking diverse right now.
Yeah, like I don't know how you watch Evan Mobley bringing the ball up and attacking the way that he is and say, oh yeah, that's the same way that Boston plays, or that's the same way that many other teams play. Like there is diversity in the league. I understand people being freaked out when it comes to how Boston.
Yeah, and I don't really like watching Boston play either. That's not their style. Is not my favorite, but like it's just one style. It just happens to be the best team right now.
And we've seen this in the past. We've seen these kind of freakouts, and usually there's a bit of an anomaly. My favorite argument is when people ask, where is it going to end? And the answer is always somewhere, man. Like, watch the Cavs, take some notes about their style of play. And if you need help taking notes, Zoom AI Companion is a great resource for you, because only you can do your best at work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no extra cost with additional paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion.
Heck yeah, brother. Good segue. Oh, yeah. You're starting to find your footing on those.
Just trying to figure out exactly where kind of my launch off point is and where to attack. And that's not too dissimilar to what we're seeing with some of these Cavs starters, where they're trying to find their way in this new offense, where they can pick their spots and attack. I do find it interesting. I don't know. Tell me if I'm crazy here. I do think that when it comes to the two guards in particular, I am noticing some small hiccups. For Darius, I love the way that he's been starting games, particularly these last two games. He's coming out and he's attacking. It is interesting to me. I don't think that his second quarters have been as particularly strong. I think he hasn't been as assertive in the second quarter, and then he kind of refines his footing in the third. You look, and he is resting a lot. And I think maybe that has something to do with it. Against Detroit, he left the game at the 3-minute mark, came back in the 6-minute mark of the second. Washington left in the 3-minute mark, came back in the 6-minute mark of the second. I think that there's a little bit of an adjustment period for him after kind of getting those 9-minute shifts of sitting on the bench.
I think I'm going to play a little armchair psychologist and say I think it's a man at battle with his nature. Okay. You got coach in your ear before the game like, oh, Darius, here's the plan. And you go, all right, I'm going to follow the plan. So you follow the plan, then you sit for a couple minutes like you mentioned, and then you come back and you're like, I'm going to backslide just a little bit back into my old habits. And then you get to halftime. Like, hey. You get to halftime and coach goes, yo, what did we talk about? Go, you're right. Sorry. Then you go out and play that way, and then you drop off again. So
speaking of halftime,
I think he's just working on that transition.
I think you're right. I think, the pass first angel or devil, depending how you want to look at it, on his shoulder is telling him, pass to the open guy, make the right play, where he has to be a little more selfish. And I think the offense just looks so much more dynamic when he is hunting those shots. But you mentioned something about them talking at halftime. We mentioned that we love Kenny's transparency, where you kind of get this insight of what the thought process is, and I think it just makes analysis so much easier and so much more interesting from our perspective, where we can kind of properly weigh that stuff. How about Jordan Ott, assistant coach for the Cavs, coming out at halftime against the Washington Wizards, talking to Serena and being like, yeah, we didn't like how we were covering the double drag from Washington, and you're going to see a change up of how we're defending this in the second half. I love getting those kind of specifics. I love specifics from coaches. I feel like it's still so rare in today's NBA, and I hope it stays. I hope it stays against some of these tougher matchups and isn't something we just do.
I missed that interview.
20.
That's great.
Yeah, it was really kind of fun, and I thought I've been really impressed with how the Cavs have come out in these third quarters. I think they've come out really kind of reinvigorated. I think they've cleaned up some of that, like. Darius, coming out after halftime, I thought he's been a lot more assertive in those third quarters. And I also feel like Donovan is finding a little bit of a groove, because I feel like to start these games, the passing has been brilliant from him. Like, I feel like he is recognizing the advantages that are being created for him, and he's making the right reads.
A lot of great interior passes from him.
A lot of great interior passes, some kickouts to the outside. I think he's been brilliant from passing. But the scoring hasn't felt natural. It feels like a lot of his shot attempts versus Toronto, Detroit, or Washington in the first half have been premeditated. That he's, all right, I've created for a guys a lot. This is my turn now to go get a bucket. And there's always going to be some element of that with Donovan Mitchell. There's going to be some element of that with Karis LeVert. Donovan's just way better at it, and you're going to live with those. But I do think you saw in the second half against Washington, and even the second half against Detroit, where he's getting those opportunities a little more in rhythm. I think there's a bit of a feeling out process for him with those off-ball possessions. And I think just like, Darius is adjusting to his new role, I think there's a little bit of that with Donovan, because, at their best in 22-23, when everything was kind of working with the starters, there was a little bit of your turn, my turn with Darius. Both of them have their strengths off ball, but Donovan isn't as strong off ball. But I think it was a lot easier for him to figure out that dynamic than it is with, all right, now we have an assertive Garland. We also have Mobley that's creating a whole lot. I'm going to have to find these spots off ball. I'm going to have the ball just a little bit less than I'm used to, and I need to figure out exactly where I fit in when it comes to this configuration with the core lineup.
And that's why I like that play I called out, where he's setting the screen for Evan, because it gives him like a very specific job to do. It's like, hey, you're going to pick and pop, you're going to go here, and then you're going to read whatever the defense gives you, and you're going to catch the ball with advantage. And like, I just feel like Donovan with the advantage is like, he's just gonna score. Like
it's so unfair. Some of these quality looks he's been getting have been amazing, and I just feel like a lot of those have come in the second half.
Yeah, and I've definitely, and just to echo you, I've definitely seen a little bit of that predetermination, especially in the first half against Washington. I felt like he was like, okay, here's my moment. I'm gonna kind of break schedule, do a couple dribble moves and take a pull up or whatever it may be. And like, that's fine. And he can do that. That's always there. But like, I think you're right that figuring out where he's going to like plug in, because like he's probably going from year to year. He almost has the most different set of circumstances of any player in terms of having to adjust to the world around him. By the time we hit the playoffs, it was just Donovan was playing point guard basically within the offense and had just a gargantuan usage rate. Even on games where he had high assists, a lot of it was like, I'm running high pick and roll. I'm going to beat someone off the dribble and do something with it. Whereas like, it does feel like it's the most different for him with, Evan picking up all these initiating responsibilities, Darius picking back up initiation responsibilities, even playing with guys like Ty Jerome. This is a team that played no backup point guards almost all year, when healthy. And now all of a sudden they are playing a backup point guard. So like, I do feel like Donovan has the most to adjust to. And, luckily, like, we're talking about a guy who's averaging 23.3 points a game and, shooting 38% from three and 50% from the field and like playing quite well. but like even then, like I do think like there's some meat on the bone there, and like that's what you want to see, right? As as we're like, is the Ty Jerome stuff going to sustain? Is Karras is playing out of his mind right now. All these different things that are going well that maybe will normalize back, like knowing that you have a few things in the kitty that could normalize upward, like Donovan getting more and more comfortable within this offense. Like that's really exciting.
Yeah, I feel like both he and Darius have another gear to get to, and that's really exciting. And
it did feel like, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it did feel like on the Darius front, this last game was the first, like, I'm here, hi, game from Darius. I mean,
23 points in 23 minutes. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, and 9 of 11 shooting. Like, just a total dominant game as a finisher, as attacker, as a passer.
My God, the passing is so good with Darius right now, and like a lot of them led to free throws, so it didn't all kind of register on the assist front. But through the first 2 games, he had 12 assists, and that created 33 assist points. Like that just goes to show how much more frequently he's spraying out to the 3-point line instead of looking to force feed to the bigs. Like
I thought that was a great stat pull, by the way.
I think his passing has been absolutely brilliant to start the seain. And
by the way, no one's really generating a ton of assists. Like this is an equal opportunity ass offense right now. Like Darius is leading the team in assists at 5.7 right now, and you go, oh man, is the offense not flowing? No, they're 8th in the league in assists.
Yeah.
So
as a quick aside, I do find it funny because it is equal opportunity. These guys aren't playing 30 minutes when it comes to the Cavs starters. And I've seen some angry tweets and stuff like that where people are like, why is Donovan not doing anything? Blah, blah, blah. Buddy, this might be a team that you just want to leave off your parlays because they care about winning and building a foundation more than putting out their individual stats.
And they just don't have the time. Games have been over.
Yeah, like Darius didn't get to play in the fourth quarter against Washington because, his scheduled time to come back in is the 6-minute mark of the fourth quarter, and they were up too much. But hey, Darius, I know you have 23 points in 23 minutes. Jarrett, I know that you are 10 of 10 from the field. You guys are still sitting on the bench. You're not getting to close this game out because, hey, it's third game in 4 nights. We're going to have that same situation against the Knicks with travel. We're taking it easy, and I am really, really curious. We talked about, are we going to see shorter shifts from the guys coming in off the bench? I assume the starters are going to play more. I would expect them to play about their 36 minutes. I am curious to see what that looks like, because if they are playing, normal starter minutes against the Knicks, that's going to be the first time they've had that minute load since May. Yeah. What does that look like? Are they going to make, tired, lazy mistakes in the fourth quarter? Are they going to be able to execute, the offensive scheme that we've seen through 3 games? Or are they going to get a little tired and revert to some of those old bad habits? Are we going to see them, just kind of lean on a little more pick and roll or initiate later in the shot clock? Like, as much as I'm curious to see it from a rotation standpoint, I think that's one of those things that we really need to look at for these next 5 games of, if it does occur, I think that I would describe that as learning experiences, right? Like, I think those are the bumps that you kind of are going to weather throughout this season as you try to, playoff proof the offense and make the necessary changes and transitions that we need to make. But I think that's important to identify that before it occurs is, hey, this is something to look out for. Like when you're watching the Cavs in the next 5 games, really keep a kind of keen eye on that.
Yeah. And maybe they're tired, and maybe it goes the other way. We're like, hey, we haven't had to do this. We didn't have to. We got through a back-to-back playing 30 minutes a game. We're actually great. We're fresh. We're ready to go.
Fresh. Yeah.
And if you need to run us a little harder today, we're down, man. We're ready. So it'll be interesting. I'm really geeked to see it. One thing we probably should talk about schematically is the Mobley running pick and roll thing.
Yeah. You want to talk about an adjustment period for Donovan. He was used to, before coming to Cleveland, playing with a big man that if you give him a pocket pass, it might go off his knee. Now, all of a sudden, he is playing with a big man, a 7-footer that is running a pick and roll, and he's the screen setter. Like, that is so different than anything that he has dealt with in his basketball experience to this point. And it's a lot of fun. It's fun to see, Mobley being used in that way. I saw a great stat that Last year, he was used as a pick and roll ball handler 40 times in his games, 9 times through 3 games already. And, I think that only
9 times through 2 games, Justin. That didn't even count the Wizards game.
Oh my goodness. And, there's always weird stuff with the player tracking passing or the player tracking type data and whatnot. I feel like it's been even more than that. But I think sometimes when, the possession ends up with Mobley kicking it to someone else and it moves around a bunch, I don't think it gets recorded as that. But it's clear as day that Mobley is being used as a ball handler. He's being used as a primary initiator at times. He's been given the leeway to kind of grab and go off of defensive rebounds. And it's fun seeing the results. I think for the most part, it's been really good. I think his legs got a little tired against Washington.
Alex Sarr is going to be a problem on defense too, man. That guy can move, and he is massive.
That man is an athlete. He needs to learn how to do basketball things, but when he does, oh my goodness, he's fun. Like, I always do this. I always think, if we were doing, a blank podcast, in this case, a Wizards podcast, would I be able to sell it? Would I be able to sit here and have fun? Would I be able to find ways to get myself invested in that season? I could absolutely do it for the Wizards. I could do that for the Pistons. I could do that. I don't know if I could do that for Toronto because it's a rebuilding team where everyone's on their second contracts. But Pistons and Wizards, sign me up. I could do that.
Yeah, I think we could sell that too. But going back to Mobley, it's been really, really fun. And it kind of takes me back to what we were talking about preseason, which is how different does it have to be to have justified kind of running the roster back with Kenny? What is what we would define as an appropriate amount of change? Is it in the metrics? Is it in the performance? What is it in? And I feel like Kenny and his staff watching this team, processing all the film from this summer after being hired, and going, hey, this Evan kid, if he's going to do this, he needs to be able to run pick and roll. And to knock out 25% of his usage as a pick and roll ball handler in 2 games, even in a shortened season last year where he played, I want to say it was 57, 58, to knock out all that in just 2 games shows me hey, these are the ways we're going to be materially different year over year. And I think that's really exciting. That's the kind of thing that makes me go, okay, it was worth it. Because if they basically played the same style year over year, it's I don't know if that really plays. And I don't know if we're learning enough about these guys. We're gonna learn if Evan Mobley can do that kind of stuff as they play better teams, or how real of a tool that is in their belt in the end. So I just think that's what I'm most excited about. I'm excited about it for Evan's development, but I'm also excited about what it means for what this coaching staff is going to be, and little peeks into what their vision for the team is.
The exciting thing about what we've seen from Evan Mobley so far is I think it's enough of, a glimpse into his potential that you can see the path being there. You can see him developing into this type of player. And, I assume that there's going to be nights where it just doesn't look good against some of the better teams and some of the better defenses. I can see him potentially struggling in that role against a team like Orlando, that just has so much physicality, that has a lot of size.
Suggs will just hit him and recover.
Right. Anthony Davis is looking like an MVP candidate. I could see him giving him trouble, right? I expected to have peaks and valleys throughout this season. But I think now that he's flashing this skill set, we still have to understand he is 3-4 years away from probably what is his peak. But now there's a roadmap. I think if we weren't seeing this to start this year, you'd start to get a little bit concerned of, okay, is there a pathway to what the ultimate version of this team we hope, where we hope they can get? I think you would start to have a little bit of that doubt creep in. And I don't know if you share this feeling, but when it comes to seeing Evan Mobley doing this, I don't know if it's all going to manifest this season. But to me, just seeing that glimpse of his potential has me more excited than I've been any season since 2017. I think this is the most excited I've been about a Cavs team since 2017. Because 2018, I just didn't feel like there was a path to anything. This, I feel like, whether it's this year, whether it's, the years in the future, I think that there's a foundation. I think there is at least a puncher's chance to really get yourself to that kind of upper echelon, and it's all centered around Evan Mobley, because we know what Donovan Mitchell is. We know how fantastic he is as a player, and we need to get guys on that all NBA level alongside him. And Evan Mobley already being, one of the best defensive players in the league. Last year, I think his stats got a little deflated because of those minute restriction games. But you look at like the per 36, it was an 18-10 season with 3 assists. This version of him, where he is so much more dynamic, where he is able to generate advantage for himself, where, you're seeing the brilliance as a passer that's been unlocked with his ball handling. As much as Kenny wanted to get him as a pick and roll ball handler, Serena mentioned it during the game where Kenny said his ball handling's further ahead of than where I thought it was. Like he's surprised me with how good it is. Like this version of Evan Mobley unlocks the type of potential that gets you really, really excited as a fan. And to me, it gives me even more reason to be excited about the next, 79 games here, because we're going to learn so much about this group, and where he gets to by April 15th is the single most important storyline when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Also, just to even note, he had I would say a bad game against Washington. Still put up 13, 4, and 2, that's fine. It's not bad. Yeah. So I just think that we're seeing we're just seeing a lot of the growth and of him being challenged. He talked about, I'm going to go do things I'm not great at this year, and I think if you could criticize past Cavs teams, it was a little bit of here's the, especially under duress, here's the thing you're good at, just do that, please. Or here's what we need you to do to thrive, or for us to thrive. And it's a little, they were, I think they were just in a different kind of mentality, and I feel like you're seeing guys stretch themselves, especially Evan, I think ultimately he is, as you mentioned, he's the most important part of this franchise. So, doing anything other than focusing on where he can take a leap, it kind of feels like a waste of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, can Mobley get to an all NBA level? That's, one of the biggest questions. Can Darius Garland get back to that all-star level, or maybe a little bit above if we're being greedy? That's another really important question. And I think, where they can get to as a core, Jared Allen, man, it's going to keep getting glossed over because the other stuff is so kind of flashy and sexy, but he is getting the ball in such advantageous situations, and he's dunking everything. His playmaking has looked good.
He's averaging 18 points a game on 8 field goal attempts per game, Justin.
Just the basic split actions that we saw, get implemented 2 years ago. I feel like it's so much more effective now because Jarrett and Mobley are just so much more dynamic as playmakers. That feed Allen had to Garland baseline for the and one finish, that was fun as hell. That was a brilliant pass from him. So I don't want to keep glossing over him because he keeps getting better. But we know that he's going to play at an all-star level, and it's just going to be a numbers crunch type of thing. But where those other three get to, I think is going to be fascinating. And what effect that has on everybody else. I love that Ty Jerome's playing as well as he is. I think Karis LeVert has had to go 1-on-5 way less than he has in the past, and that's led to him being more effective as a player overall. There's not a lot of record scratch.
That dude is also hooping right now.
He is hooping. He looks
a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
He can make kind of those routine possessions look a little hairy at times. But I think he is just getting the ball in such good situations, and I just feel like there hasn't been a lot of record scratch possessions for him. Dean Wade has been so confident as a shooter. I think his defensive impact is always kind of slides under the radar, but I felt it at times. I felt it on the defensive glass. I think he's making a great impact there. So it's a lot of fun, man. It's fun that they've been as good as they've been when the guards are clearly still figuring some stuff out, where, Evan Mobley is getting comfortable in this new role. And when we don't have Max Strus, who, was kind of that impact glue guy that made such a big difference last year. I mean, the team was night and day better with him on the court versus off the court. And, I hope he comes back healthy, because I think the type of situations he would be put in are going to be some of the best quality looks that he's had as an NBA player. I think I think, a healthy Max Strus makes a big difference to this team.
Yeah, I really, I've seen some folks on the Twitter sphere, a few of our fellow podcasters talking about, if they keep playing this well, should they just keep Dean in the starting lineup? And like, I gotta say, I do not agree with that. I think Max just does things that this team doesn't have otherwise. His secondary playmaking is so strong. His movement, his like FU toughness.
The pace you can play out with that lineup, I think, goes up with Max.
Yeah, and I just think Max, there's a reason this team made him their top priority last summer, and were validated in doing so.
Yeah,
and so like I think I could see a world in the coming years where Max is not your starting small forward based on like bigger swings or bigger changes to the roster, but like
I don't think it's for Dean.
Not for, I don't think for anyone else that's on the roster right now. I think he is our best role player, of the non.
Whoa, Jalen Tyson's going to be an MVP in a couple of years. What are you talking about?
I'm just saying, right this second, of outside of the core four, I think Max is the best role player on the team by a mile. I think he is so valuable to what this team does.
I think he's their fifth best player.
Yeah,
like simply
straight up. I think that's I probably overly complicated my framing, which I have a tendency to do. But yeah, I think he's their fifth best player. I don't see any reason to complicate things, and also your rotation would get real wonky real fast if you had to play all those guard/wings off the bench. So I think Max absolutely should come back. Should not get Wally pipped. And by the way, I don't think the starting lineup's numbers are so great that like they're not winning because their starting lineup is blowing teams off the ball.
No, like I said, they actually struggled defensively those first two games. It was a lot better against Washington on the defensive end, and that's basically been where they've been having an advantage, because the offense hasn't been clicking yet for that group. But we're going to see how this looks, man. Like, these next 5 games are going to be really important. As I said, they go 3-2 over this stretch, I'll be really happy. If they do better than that, I'm going to be like over the moon, and it's going to get unreasonable on this podcast. People are going to absolutely hate us because we are going to be bouncing off the damn walls. Big thanks to everyone that tuned in live. We'll be doing pregame podcasts, so make sure you guys like and subscribe on YouTube, because we will be going pregame live from Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse prior to the Lakers and Magic. Really excited to get back down to Cleveland to see what's going on, to see the LeBron and Bronny show. We're going to have a lot of fun there. So make sure you guys like and subscribe on YouTube and click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.